Emma Williams had worked as a corporate inspector for 15 years, but this assignment felt different from all the others. She took a deep breath as she walked through the tall glass doors of Sterling Financial Group. Her reflection showed a woman in her early 40s wearing a simple blue janitor uniform, carrying a yellow mop bucket, and wearing a name badge that read MOM. Nobody at the company knew that Emma was actually there to investigate serious reports of workplace discrimination and unfair treatment of employees. This was her third day pretending to be a cleaning lady. She had arrived at 6 in the morning, just like the other janitors, and had spent hours mopping floors, emptying trash bins, and cleaning bathrooms. The work was harder than she had expected, and her back ached from bending over to scrub floors and reach into corners. As lunchtime approached, Emma's stomach began to rumble loudly. She realized she had been so focused on her investigation that she had forgotten to eat breakfast. The smell of fresh sandwiches and hot soup drifted from the main cafeteria, making her mouth water. She had seen other employees go in and out of the bright, cheerful room all morning, and it looked like a pleasant place to grab a quick meal. Emma left her cleaning cart in the hallway and walked toward the cafeteria entrance. She pulled a crumpled £5 note from her uniform pocket, thinking about what kind of sandwich she might buy. Maybe something with chicken, or perhaps a nice vegetable soup to warm her up. "Excuse me, where do you think you're going?" A sharp and friendly voice suddenly stopped her right at the cafeteria entrance. Emma looked up to see a man in his 40s standing directly in her path. James Peterson was a department manager she had noticed round the building over the past few days. His expensive dark blue suit was perfectly pressed. His shoes were polished to a shine, and his gold watch caught the light as he crossed his arms. Everything about his appearance and cold expression made it clear that he thought very highly of himself and expected others to respect his authority. "I was just going to buy a sandwich, sir," Emma said as politely as she could, holding up her £5 note to show that she had money to pay for a food. James Peterson left in a mean, mocking way that made Emma feel small and embarrassed. "Cleaning staff don't eat here," he said firmly, as if he were explaining something obvious to a child. "You people use the basement break room with the vending machine. This cafeteria is for office employees only. Surely you understand that." Emma felt her cheeks begin to burn with embarrassment as other employees in the area stopped their conversations to watch what was happening. Some looked uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up to defend her. "But, sir, I just need to buy some food," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I've been working since 6 o'clock this morning and haven't eaten anything yet." "I don't care what time you started working," James said loudly, making sure that everyone nearby could hear every word. "You're a janitor. You need to know your place in this company. Now take your bucket and go downstairs where you belong. Don't let me catch you trying to come in here again." The entire cafeteria had gone completely quiet. Emma could feel dozens of eyes watching her as she stood there, holding her £5 note and feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her professional life. The silence was so thick that she could hear the soft hum of the coffee machines and the distant sound of traffic outside. With as much dignity as she could manage, Emma gathered her cleaning supplies and began walking toward the basement stairs. Her face felt hot with shame, and she could hear whispers starting behind her as people began to talk about what they had just witnessed. Behind her, she heard James Peterson's voice talking to his colleagues in a satisfied tone. "You have to be firm with these people," he said, as if Emma could not hear him. "If you give them an inch, they'll think they can do whatever they want. They need to understand the hierarchy around here." Emma walked down the cold concrete steps to the basement break room, a small, windowless space with flickering fluorescent lights and two old vending machines. The room smelled like old coffee and cleaning supplies. She sat down at one of the plastic chairs round a small table and fed coins into the sandwich machine. The sandwich that dropped down was wrapped in plastic and felt stale when she picked it up. As she unwrapped it and took her first bite, Emma realized that something important had just happened. This investigation, which had started as just another job, had suddenly become very personal. She thought about the look of satisfaction on James Peterson's face and the way he had spoken about these people as if janitors were less human than office workers. She thought about the other employees who had watched but said nothing. Most importantly, she thought about all the real janitors who had to face this kind of treatment every single day. Emma finished her stale sandwich and made a quiet decision. James Peterson had no idea who he was really dealing with, and she was going to make sure he learned an important lesson about treating people with respect. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma began to see Sterling Financial Group through completely different eyes. Each morning, she arrived at work an hour earlier than required, and each evening, she stayed long after her shift was supposed to end. She was not just there to clean offices and empty trash cans anymore. She was there to watch, to listen, and to document everything she witnessed with the careful attention of someone who knew that lives depended on what she discovered. During her first week of deeper investigation, Emma met Robert Thompson, a security guard who worked the day shift at the front desk. Robert was a kind man in his 50s with graying hair and tired eyes. When Emma stopped to chat with him during her lunch break, she learned that he had been working at Sterling Financial for 12 long years. Despite his dedication and the trust the company placed in him to protect their building, Robert was still being paid only minimum wage. He told Emma that he had asked for a raise many times over the years, but his requests were always denied or ignored completely. "I have 2 kids in university," Robert said quietly, glancing round to make sure no managers were nearby. "My wife works 2 jobs just so we can pay the bills. After 12 years here, you'd think they might value my experience a little more." Emma also became friends with Mary Collins, an elderly cleaning lady who had been working at the company for 8 years. Mary was in her 60s and walked with a slight limp that got worse as the day went on. When Emma asked her about it, Mary showed her the old, worn-out shoes she wore to work every day. The soles had holes in them, and they provided no support for her feet. "I can't afford to buy new work shoes," Mary explained, wincing as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "The company says we have to provide our own uniforms and shoes, but they don't pay us enough to buy proper ones. My feet hurt so much by the end of each day that I can barely walk to the bus stop." Emma met David Williams, a maintenance worker who had been with the company for 15 years. David was a quiet, intelligent man who knew every pipe, wire, and ventilation system in the entire building. He could fix anything that broke and often prevented expensive problems before they happened. However, Emma discovered that David was never invited to company meetings, even when they were discussing building maintenance or safety issues. "They make all these decisions about the building without asking me," David told Emma as they ate lunch together in the basement break room. "Then, when something goes wrong because they didn't understand how the systems work, they blame me for not preventing it. It doesn't make any sense." Every day, Emma watched James Peterson carefully. She began to see patterns in his behavior that were even worse than she had first realized. She watched him snap angrily at Lisa, the young receptionist, whenever she transferred phone calls from people he considered unimportant. She saw him deliberately refuse to hold elevated doors for cleaning staff, letting the heavy doors close right in their faces even when they were carrying heavy supplies. Emma documented how James scheduled important departmental meetings during lunch breaks. knowing perfectly well that hourly workers like janitors and security guards could not attend because they were not allowed to take time off during their shifts. This meant that decisions affecting their work were made without any input from the people who actually did the jobs. The more Emma observed and investigated, the more she realized that James Peterson was not just a rude individual. He was systematically creating and maintaining a system that treated certain employees as second-class citizens. She discovered evidence of wage theft, where overtime hours that workers had clearly worked were mysteriously disappearing from their timesheets before payday. She found out that cleaning staff were required to buy their own supplies and uniforms from their small paychecks, while managers like James received generous expense accounts for meals, travel, and office supplies. Emma uncovered safety violations throughout the building that put workers at risk every day. Broken equipment was not repaired, protective gear was not provided, and dangerous working conditions were ignored as long as they did not affect the comfortable offices where managers worked. But what hurt Emma's heart the most was watching how these good, hard-working people had slowly learned to accept poor treatment as normal. She saw them apologize for simply existing in the same spaces as office workers. She watched them eat their lunches in cold, uncomfortable basement rooms while executives enjoyed catered meals in bright, warm conference rooms. She observed how they used broken facilities and outdated equipment while managers worked with the newest technology. Emma filled notebook after notebook with detailed evidence. She took photographs of safety violations, recorded conversations where James made discriminatory comments, and carefully documented every instance of unfair treatment she witnessed. She knew she was building a strong legal case against James Peterson and the company's discriminatory practices, but more than just building a case for punishment. Emma was beginning to understand that she was documenting the daily lives of real people whose dignity and livelihood were being affected by one man's cruelty and prejudice every single day. She was not just an inspector doing her job anymore. She had become someone who cared deeply about making sure that Robert, Mary, David, and all the other hard-working people at Sterling Financial finally received the respect and fair treatment they deserved. 3 weeks into her investigation, Emma formed a very special friendship with Margaret Thompson, a soft-spoken woman in her early 60s who had been cleaning offices at Sterling Financial for 22 long years. Margaret had gentle grey hair that she always kept neatly pulled back, kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a warm smile that made everyone feel welcome. She moved through the building with quiet grace, always greeting people politely even when they ignored her completely. One evening, as Emma and Margaret worked together emptying trash bins from the executive offices, Margaret began to share her story. Her voice was soft and thoughtful as she spoke about her past while they moved from office to office with their cleaning carts. "I started working here when my husband passed away," Margaret told Emma, pausing to look out one of the large windows at the city lights below. "It was 22 years ago, and I had 3 young children at home. I needed a job that would let me be there when they got out of school, and the evening cleaning shift was perfect for that. Mr. Peterson wasn't working here back then. The old managers treated all of us with respect and kindness. As the days passed, Emma learned more and more about Margaret's incredible dedication to her work and her co-workers. Margaret knew every single employee's name in the entire building. From the newest intern to the oldest executive, she remembered everyone's birthdays and often brought small homemade treats to share with people who seemed to be having difficult days. When other cleaning staff were sick or struggling with personal problems, Margaret often stayed late to help them finish their work so they would not get in trouble with their supervisors. Despite Margaret's deep knowledge of the building, her years of experience, and her obvious dedication to the company, She had never been offered a single promotion or pay raise beyond the legal minimum wage increases that the government required. Emma found this shocking. Especially, she watched Margaret work with such skill and efficiency. I once had an idea for a more efficient cleaning schedule that would save the company a lot of money. Margaret said quietly one evening as they organized supplies in the storage closet. Her voice became even softer as she remembered the painful experience. I wrote it all down very carefully and presented it to Mr. Peterson. He looked at me like I was crazy for even speaking to him. He told me to stick to emptying trash cans and leave all the thinking to people who had college degrees. He said that was not my job to worry about such things. Emma also got to know Thomas Mitchell, a young maintenance worker in his late 20s, who was trying his best to support his sick mother on his small salary. Thomas had dark hair, intelligent brown eyes, and hands that were always slightly dirty from his repair work. He was brilliant with all kinds of repairs and seemed to have a natural understanding of how machines and systems worked. Thomas could fix anything that broke in the building, from complex computer systems to simple door handles, and he often figured out creative solutions that saved the company money. However, Emma noticed that James Peterson treated Thomas as if he were completely invisible. When Thomas tried to report problems or suggest improvements, James would either ignore him completely or dismiss his ideas without even listening. Emma watched this happen many times and felt angry each time she saw it. During a particularly cold week in winter, the heating system on the executive floor broke down completely. The problem was complicated and required someone with real skill to fix it. Thomas worked for 12 straight hours, skipping meals and breaks, to repair the system before the executives arrived for work the next morning. He crawled through tight spaces, tested dozens of connections, and finally discovered the problem deep within the building's mechanical systems. When Thomas finally fixed the heating system, Emma expected that James Peterson would thank him or at least acknowledge his hard work. Instead, James complained loudly that the repair had taken too long and that the executives had been slightly uncomfortable for a few hours. He never once thanked Thomas for working through the night to solve the problem. Through these growing friendships with Margaret and Thomas, Emma began to understand something that made her investigation even more important. Sterling Financial was not just treating employees unfairly, which was bad enough. The company was also wasting incredible talent and missing opportunities to improve and save money. Emma realized that Margaret could probably run the entire facilities department better than most of the highly paid managers. Margaret understood the building, knew all the employees, and had years of experience solving problems efficiently. Thomas could save the company thousands of dollars in repair costs if anyone bothered to listen to his suggestions and ideas for preventing problems before they became expensive emergencies. But James Peterson had created a workplace culture where people like Margaret and Thomas were seen as completely replaceable. Their ideas were considered worthless. Their years of experience were ignored, and their dignity as human beings was treated as unimportant. Emma knew that she already had more than enough evidence to shut down James Peterson's department and probably get him fired from the company. Her notebooks were full of documented violations, her camera held photos of safety problems, and her recordings proved discrimination and unfair treatment. But now Emma wanted to do much more than just punish James Peterson for his cruel behavior. She wanted to create real, lasting change for people like Margaret and Thomas, who deserved so much better than what they were receiving. They deserved respect, fair treatment, and the chance to use their talents to help the company succeed. The quarterly company meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon in Sterling Financial's largest and most elegant conference room. The room had tall windows that looked out over the city, a long polished wooden table that could seat 30 people, and expensive leather chairs that cost more than most employees made in a month, senior executives, department heads, and board members slowly fill the impressive space. Carrying their coffee cups and important-looking folders, James Peterson stood at the front of the room, adjusting his tie and checking his presentation slides one final time. He was wearing his most expensive suit, a navy blue one that he had bought specifically for important meetings like this. His gold watch gleamed under the bright conference room lights. And his hair was perfectly styled. This was his moment, too. Shine in front of the company's most powerful people. "Good afternoon, everyone." James began with a confident smile, clicking his remote control to start his presentation. "I'm pleased to report on my department's outstanding performance over the past year. Our efficiency improvements have reduced operational costs by 12%, which represents significant savings for the company." The board members nodded approvingly as James clicked through slide after slide of charts and numbers. He talked about streamlined processes, reduced expenses, and improved productivity. His voice was smooth and professional as he explained how his department had managed to cut costs while maintaining service quality. "We've streamlined our workforce and eliminated unnecessary expenses," James announced proudly, gesturing toward a graph that showed declining labor costs. "By making tough decisions and implementing smart management strategies, we've created a more efficient operation that benefits everyone." Just as James was reaching the most important part of his presentation, the conference room door opened quietly. Emma entered the room wearing her familiar blue janitor uniform and pushing her yellow cleaning cart. She moved slowly and carefully, trying not to make any noise that might disturb the important meeting. She had planned this moment very carefully, timing her arrival for a maximum impact. Emma began emptying the waste paper baskets around the room, working her way toward the front where James was standing. She kept her head down and moved with the quiet efficiency that everyone expected from cleaning staff. James stopped talking mid-sentence when he noticed Emma in the room. His face immediately turned bright red with anger, and his confident expression changed to one of rage and embarrassment. He could not believe that a janitor had dared to interrupt his most important presentation of the year. "What do you think you're doing?" James demanded loudly, his voice echoing through the quiet conference room. "Can't you see we're in an important meeting? How dare you come in here right now?" Emma looked up from the trash basket she was emptying and spoke in a respectful, apologetic tone. "I'm very sorry, sir," she said quietly. "I was just doing my job. I didn't mean to disturb anyone." "Your job is to clean when we're not here," James shouted, pointing angrily toward the door. His face was getting redder by the second, and small drops of sweat were forming on his forehead. "How dare you interrupt a board meeting? Get out of here right now." James turned toward the board members, waving his hand dismissively toward Emma. "This is exactly the kind of incompetence I was just talking about," he said with obvious frustration. "These people have no sense of appropriate timing or respect for important business. They just do whatever they want without thinking about." "Mr. Peterson," Emma interrupted calmly, reaching into her cleaning cart with steady hands. The entire room fell completely silent as Emma pulled out her official inspector's badge and credentials. The small metal badge caught the light as she held it up for everyone to see. She then removed her janitor's cap, letting her hair fall naturally round her shoulders as she stood up straight. Her entire bearing changed from that of a humble cleaning lady to someone with years of professional authority and confidence. "My name is Emma Williams," she announced clearly, her voice carrying easily through the silent room. "I'm a senior workplace inspector with the Department of Labor Standards for the past month. I have been conducting an undercover investigation into reports of discrimination and labor violations at this company." James Peterson's face went completely white. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. He looked like he might faint or be sick right there in front of everyone. The board members leaned forward in their expensive leather chairs, suddenly very interested in what Emma had to say. Some of them exchanged worried glances, while others reached for their phones to take notes. Emma opened a thick folder that she had been carrying in her cleaning cart. Inside were dozens of pages of carefully documented evidence, photographs, and recorded conversations. She began reading from her official report in a clear, professional voice. I have documented evidence of wage theft, discriminatory practices, multiple safety violations, and the deliberate creation of a hostile work environment, Emma stated. Looking directly at James Peterson, Mr. Peterson, your department has violated no fewer than 17 different labor laws under my direct observation over the past 4 weeks. She looked round the room at the shocked faces of the executives, making eye contact with each person to ensure they understood the seriousness of the situation. The efficiency improvements you just heard Mr. Peterson describe, Emma continued, were achieved primarily by stealing overtime pay from your hardest-working employees and creating a culture of fear, discrimination, and intimidation that violates both company policy and federal law. Within 24 hours of Emma's shocking revelation in the conference room, Sterling Financial Group moved quickly to address the serious problems she had exposed. James Peterson's department was officially shut down immediately, pending a complete and thorough investigation by both company officials and government inspectors. James himself was terminated from his position that same evening and escorted from the building by security guards. He also faced potential criminal charges for wage theft and discrimination, which could result in heavy fines and even jail time. But Emma's important work was just beginning. The next morning, she met with Sterling Financial's entire board of directors in the same conference room where she had revealed her true identity. This time, however, she was wearing a professional business suit instead of her janitor uniform, and she carried a briefcase full of detailed recommendations instead of a cleaning cart. Emma presented a comprehensive plan for changing the company's culture and practices. She spoke with passion and authority. She addressed the worried board members, who knew they were facing potential lawsuits and serious government fines if they did not take immediate action. You have incredible employees who have been treated poorly for far too many years, Emma told the board members, looking each of them in the eye. Margaret Thompson knows this building and its operations better than any manager you could possibly hire from outside the company. Thomas Mitchell has engineering skills and creative problem-solving abilities that could save you thousands of dollars in maintenance costs every year. These people are not just workers who can be easily replaced. They are valuable assets that you have been ignoring and wasting. The board members, realizing how much trouble the company was in, listened very carefully to every word of Emma's recommendations. They took detailed notes and asked many questions about how to fix the problems she had discovered. Emma explained that the company needed to create fair wages for all employees, establish proper benefits packages, and develop clear promotion pathways that would allow hard-working people to advance in their careers, based on their skills and dedication rather than just their educational backgrounds or social connections. 6 months later, Sterling Financial Group looked like a completely different company. The changes that Emma had recommended were not just written policies that nobody followed. They were real, meaningful improvements that affected every single person who worked in the building. Margaret Thompson, the kind woman who had cleaned offices for 22 years, was promoted to Director of Facilities Management for the first time in her adult life. Margaret had a salary that allowed her to live comfortably without worrying about paying her bills. She finally received the respect and recognition that her years of experience and dedication deserved. Margaret now supervised a team of facility managers and was responsible for making important decisi. On about building operations, Thomas Mitchell, the talented young maintenance worker who had been treated as invisible for so many years, became the head of the entire maintenance department. He immediately began implementing cost-saving improvements that impressed even the most skeptical executives. Thomas created preventive maintenance schedules that prevented expensive emergency repairs, designed more efficient systems that reduced energy costs, and trained other workers to handle basic repairs themselves. The company eliminated the cold, uncomfortable basement break room where cleaning staff had been forced to eat their meals alone. In its place, they created a beautiful common area on the main floor with large windows, comfortable furniture, and a kitchen where all employees, regardless of their job titles or departments, could eat together, share conversations, and build friendships across different levels of the company. Sterling Financial established fair wages that allowed every worker to support themselves and their families with dignity. They created proper benefits packages that included health insurance, vacation time, and retirement savings plans for all employees, not just managers and executives. Most importantly, they developed clear promotion pathways that gave every hard-working person the opportunity to advance in their career based on their performance, dedication, and skills. Emma returned to Sterling Financial Group for one final inspection 6 months after her dramatic revelation. This time, she was wearing a business suit and carrying her official inspector credentials openly. She walked through the building with amazement, seeing how much had changed in such a short time. Emma found Margaret Thompson in her new office, a bright room with large windows that overlooked the city. Margaret was training 3 new facility managers, teaching them about building operations and sharing the knowledge she had gained over her many years of experience. Margaret looked happier and more confident than Emma had ever seen her. "No," Margaret said with a warm, genuine smile as she looked round her new office. "I never thought I would see the day when someone like me would have an office with a window. For so many years, I thought this kind of opportunity was only for other people." Emma smiled back at her friend, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and joy. Everyone deserves dignity at work. "Margaret," she said warmly, "every person who works hard and treats others with kindness deserves respect and fair treatment. I am just glad that I was there at the right time to help make it happen." As Emma left Sterling Financial Group for the last time, walking through the same glass doors where she had first entered wearing a janitor's uniform, she felt incredibly proud of what had been accomplished. Her investigation had done much more than just expose wrongdoing and punish one cruel manager. It had transformed the lives of many good people and created a workplace where every person was valued, respected, and given the opportunity to use their talents to contribute to the company's success.